Good day, everyone. I am Lovely Jane H. Mbaga from BSN Math 2-A1 and from Group 2. Now, I'll be continuing reporting about the 1973 Philippine Constitution. So, 1973 Philippine Constitution starting with its establishment of independent constitutional bodies. So although the Commission on Elections or COMELEC was already present under the 1935 Constitution, the 1973 Constitution reinforced its independence to ensure clean and fair elections, especially amid growing concerns about political manipulation during that time. But a major change was the introduction of three additional constitutional commissions. So first is Civil Service Commission or CSC. So it is a task with ensuring merit-based hiring and promotion in the government. So this was meant to professionalize the civil service and reduce political patronage. So second is a Commission of Audit or COA. So given the responsibility to audit all government expenditures, this commission plays a key role in transparency and accountability, so preventing misuse of public funds. Third is the National Economic and Development Authority or NEDA. So, though not constitutional commissions today, the 1973 Constitutional highlighted NEDA's role in economic planning. So, it was central to implementing long-term national development programs during Marcos regime. So let's proceed to structure of the Constitution. Structure of the Constitution. So let's look at the structure of the 1973 Constitution. It is composed of a preamble and 17 articles, each outlining specific areas of governance and national policy. One of its most notable features is the framework it created for a parliamentary form of government. So a major shift from the presidential system under the 1935 Constitution. So in this setup, executive power was vested in a prime minister rather than a president, while unicameral legislature called the National Assembly was responsible for creating laws. So this structure was designed to encourage stronger cooperation between legislative and executive branches. However, in practice, Marcos retained control by delaying the actual implementation of parliamentary system, effectively centralizing power under himself. So next is, let's proceed to a martial law and ratification. So let's discuss the political context surrounding the 1973 Constitution. So President Ferdinand Marcos declared a martial law in 1972, citing threats of communist insurgency and civil unrest. But this move allowed him to extend his rule beyond a constitutional limit. While the 1971 Constitutional Convention was still finalizing the new character, Marcos exerted significant influence over its member. Then in 1973, the Constitution was ratified not through a national plebiscite, but through so-called citizen assemblies where people were gathered to vote by a show of hands. Many legal scholars and citizens questioned the legitimacy of this method, arguing that it lacked transparency and proper representation. So this controversial ratification process contributed to the growing authoritarianism of the Marcos regime, as it provided a legal facade for martial law and one-man rule. So next is authoritarian rule and downfall. So let's now focus on the authoritarian nature of the Marcos regime under 1973 Constitution and how it ultimately led to his downfall. So after the ratification of the Constitution in 1973, President Ferdinand Marcos took full advantage of its vague and flexible provisions. So, through the Constitution established a parliamentary government, in reality, Marcos consolidated power in himself. So, he repeatedly amended the Constitution, notably through amendments number 6 and number 7, giving him legislative powers. So even when the interim Batasang Pambansa, the National Assembly, was not in session. So this effectively abolished the checks and balances and gave Marcos the ability to create laws by decree. So, by passing the legislative process altogether. So, although the structure was labeled parliamentary, Marcos ruled a dictator with centralized executive power, control over the military, and a silent opposition. So, this authoritarian rule led to growing discontent, especially in the 1980s. So the economy was deteriorating, human rights violations were rampant, and corruption was widespread. So a major turning point come in 1983 was with the assassination of opposition leader Benigno Ninoy Aquino Jr. So his death triggered massive public outrage and exposed the brutality of the regime. People from all walks of life, students, workers, clergy, and professionals joined in demanding change. So this widespread discontent culminated in the EDSA People Power Revolution of February 1986, a peaceful uprising that forced Marcos to flee the country. So his departure ended 20 years of authoritarian rule, and Corazon Aquino, the widow of Ninoy Aquino, was installed as the new president, restoring democracy in the Philippines. Now, let's proceed to the preamble of 1973 Constitution. Now, let's take a closer look at the preamble of the 1973 Constitution. So, it begins with the phrase, "We, the sovereign Filipino people." So, it emphasizing the idea that power originates from the people. So a common principle in democratic constitution is it invokes divine providence, reflecting and religious and moral foundations of Filipino society. So the preamble also declares the goals of the constitution. So first is to embody national ideals. Second is to promote general welfare. Third is conserve and develop the patrimony of the nation and secure the blessings of democracy through justice, peace, liberty, and equality. So, ironically, through these values sounds democratic, they were contradicted by the political reality under Marcos' civil liberties were suspended, media was censored, and power was centralized. So, this contradiction between the idealistic language of the preamble and the authoritarian rule is in practice is a key reason why many scholars and historians critic the 1973 Constitution as being a tool for dictatorship distinguished in democratic language. So now let's proceed the 17 articles of the 1973 Constitution. So let's break down the structures of the 1973 Constitution, which consists of 17 articles outline the government's principles, powers, and responsibilities. So first, we have article number 1, which is national territory. So it defines the boundaries of the Philippine state, including all islands and waters under its jurisdiction. So next is article 2. So it's declaration of principles and states policies. So it contains 10 sections outlining the nation's core political values such as sovereignty, rule of law, and the rule of family and education. The third article is citizenship. It defines who is considered a Filipino citizen. Next is Article 4, Bill of Rights. So it includes 23 sections affirming civil liberties like freedom of speech, rights to due process, and protections from unlawful searches. However, under martial law, many of these rights were suspended in practice. So Article 5 and 6 is duties of citizens and suffrage. So it's lay out the responsibilities of Filipino citizens and the rights to vote again, while these rights were written into law. The actual elections under Marcos were often manipulated or controlled. So next is Article 7. So the President and Vice President outlines the rules of executive officials, but because of constitutional amendments and martial law, the lines between executive, legislative, and judicial powers were blurred. Now, let's proceed to Article 8. So, Article 8, the National Assembly. So, it has 20 sections. This article outlines the legislative branch, which was unicameral, meaning it had only one chamber, unlike the bicameral Congress. Under the 1935 and 1987 constitutions, the National Assembly was meant to hold the law-making power, but in reality, during martial law, it often served only the approved Marcos decisions. So the president, later called prime minister, held more actual power. Next is article number 9. So the prime minister and the cabinet. It has 16 sections. So this article defines the role of prime minister as head of government, and the cabinet has executive advisors. Under a genuine parliamentary system, the Prime Minister would be accountable to the National Assembly. However, Marcos held both the roles of President and Prime Minister for a time. So centralizing executive power and overriding parliamentary accountability. So next is article number 10. So this is the judiciary. It has 12 sections. Here we see the structures of the judicial branch, including the Supreme Court and law courts. While the Constitution upheld the independence of the judiciary, in practice, so Marcos used his powers to appoint loyal judges, weakening the court's ability to check executive abuse. This undermined the separation of powers. So next is article number 11. It's local governments. It has 5 sections. So this article provides the framework for local autonomy. It aims to empower provincial, city, and municipal government. But local officials were often appointed or influenced by Malacanang, especially during martial law. So true decentralization was limited. Now, let's proceed to article number 12. So, constitutional commissions, it has 23 sections. So, this article formalized the independence of three major commissions. So, first is civil service commissions. Second is commissions of elections or COMELEC. Third is commissions on audit or COA. So, these bodies were designed to ensure professionalism, integrity, and fairness in government service. However, during the dictatorship, COMELEC was accused of allowing electoral fraud, and commissions had limited ability to challenge executive power. So next is Article number 13, Accountability of Public Officers. So it has 6 sections. So this article emphasizes the public office is a public trust. So it outlines the grounds for impeachment and removal of public officials for misconduct or abuse of power. While strong in theory, under Marcos, corruptions and nepotism flourished and few officials were held accountability due to the lack of genuine checks and balances. Next is Article number 14, the national economy and patrimony. So it has 15 sections. So discuss the economic policies of the state, including foreign ownership, natural resources, and economic planning. So it highlighted Filipino control over the economy, but Marcos' regime was marked by crony capitalism, where economic privileges were granted to his allies, leading to widespread inequality and economic decline in the 1980s. Next is Article number 15. It is a general provisions. It has 16 sections. So this article covers various topics not addressed in earlier parts of the Constitution, such as the national flag, official language, and armed forces. So it reflects the cultural identity and state functions, but like others article, its effectiveness depended on how power was exercised, so often in a highly centralized and militarized manner under Marcos. So next is Article number 16. It is amendments. It has 2 sections. So this article explains how Constitution could be amended. However, under Marcos, amendments were often pushed without proper public debate and were used to legalize martial law powers up extend his control, like Amendments number 6, which allowed him to issue laws even after the parliamentary system was established. Last article is Article number 17, Transitory Provisions. It has 16 sections, so this article outlines the transition from the 1935 to 1973 Constitution, including holdover positions and rules during the chief. So it was supposed to be a temporary guide, but instead, Marcos used these provisions to delay the full implementation of the parliamentary system and maintain personal political dominance. So, to summary, in 1973 Constitution, it contained detailed articles that reflects functioning government structures. The reality was far from ideal. So the Marcos regime manipulated these provisions, often ignoring democratic process and concentrating power in the executive branch. So it's a prime example of how a constitution can appear complete on paper but still be used to justify authoritarian rule when checks and balances are not respected. So, so that's all for my reporting. Thank you for listening and God bless.